Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kurt Ratnowski, the publisher of Yankee T News, back at it again. Yes, sir. I've lost count, Eric. We're up to number 50 now.
49.
49, close. So, and co-sponsored by the Greenwich Stanford Tea Party Patriots. So, certainly top of the news. It's all the stuff that's been going on in Ukraine. And just to help out, I wanted to start with a few pieces of factual information, like this map here. I have to say that it's a bit of a gut call because I've been trying to project out in my mind what's going to happen with this conflict going through April, going through May, maybe even going into June and longer. I can't say I have a good answer. Nonetheless, so we start with this map of the Ukraine. And over here is what's called the Donbass region. I'll give you a better look at it. This is where all the separatists live, and they've been working with Russia since 2014, I believe, or 2012, if not longer, in terms of an actual war on Ukrainian soil. Okay, so, hate to say it, but the best information I could find was, I'm choking on this, from Al Jazeera. All right, so roughly speaking, these are the positions, Russian positions throughout the country, okay? So over here is Kiev, and you can see that this position is very close. Now, there have been reports, of course, that the Ukrainians have been taking over some of these positions and making these discoveries about awful atrocities in these areas, and we have some people questioning whether or not it's some kind of fake news or false flag or misinformation. So it'll get sorted out, don't worry. All right, so there's this group, then over here. Now, down here is the Crimea, which was taken over, quote, annexed. Was that 2012 or 2014? I'm trying to remember. 2015, okay. So again, so that green line there marks the edge of what's called the Donbass region, where, you know, there's a predominantly large population of, quote, ethnic Russians or Russian-speaking people. So what's interesting is that based on that map, you see that the Russians have really only taken part of the Donbass region, and not all of it. So some of the, if some may say it, misinformation we've been getting from the Russians is their plan to abandon this position, and concentrate over here. Now, others have suggested that the real strategy for the Russians will ultimately look like this. So this one is, this is what the Russians want, okay? You look, and what they want is a land bridge all along the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, right there. They want to control all of that, plus the Donbass region, all right? So that's their ultimate goal. The thing is, if you look at this map and compare it with the earlier one, at best, they have only been partially successful. Should we think of the Russians as being stalled out at this time? Maybe. You know, the problem is when you, on paper, when you look at how they line up against the Ukrainian army, you don't understand why the Russians are having the problems they do, but that's it. Anyway, this is what I think the Russians will get. In other words, they're not going to get bupkis. The combination of powerful elements of the international community, plus Ukraine, leaning on them, will ultimately have their impact. And then in addition, yes, I know. There's so much going on here, you can't help but have to talk about it. The, what is it? First, you had some German authorities worried that the Russians would turn off the natural gas going to Germany. And then what happened? Several days later, they went there. Gazprom shut off the gas to Germany. Now, how it's being handled at this moment, I don't know. But in the run-up to that, you already had Germany working hard to reduce its dependence upon Russian sources for oil and gas. And in very round numbers, they've managed to reduce their dependence on Russia by a half to a third, okay? And now they're working on doing more. Under Trump, the talk was about setting up liquid natural gas terminals, and we had a whole deal set up where Germany would be getting liquid natural gas from us and other sources, and they wouldn't have to worry about Russia. In any event, so that is my take. We'll see how that turns out. It should also be pointed out, you know, the Republicans aren't the only ones capable of snatching victory from snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Because here's a piece talking about how we were all excited. There's a company called AeroVironment that make these drones called switchblades. They're self-destructing drones that home in on a tank or whatever the target is and just obliterate it. Well, it turns out that Biden is going to send the lower level switchblades, the ones that are less effective, because he's afraid of upsetting Putin. All right, maybe this is more disinformation. I don't know, but I'm just sharing it with you. Okay. Moving right along here, and we'll save that other stuff for later. Okay. Well, just to mention it, there was this about how the Ukrainians claim they shot down a Russian MiG. The thing is, when you look at the pictures of the destroyed aircraft on the ground, you can see the red star on the wing. So it appears that this may have actually happened. Meantime, the other hot issue here is we, from time to time, have talked about the fentanyl problem in the nation and in Connecticut. So this is part of an article I'm working on. I hope to have it up in a couple of days. What alerted me to this was an article showing that, roughly speaking, Connecticut's in the upper third as far as deaths from fentanyl are concerned. Just to give you a serious contrast, Texas, where fentanyl passes through like water, their death rate from fentanyl is 5 per 100,000. By contrast, Connecticut is roughly 35 per 100,000. So 7 times as many people on a per capita basis die from fentanyl in Connecticut than in Texas. Go figure. And still the worst state in the union is West Virginia. In their case, it's around 65 per 100,000, all right? But what makes this even more mysterious is that when you look at New York State next door, theirs is 14 per 100,000. So how is it that our tiny little state has more than double the death rate from fentanyl as compared with New York State, with New York City there? All right, so there's clearly something wrong with this picture. All right, so moving on. All right, I love this. Okay, this is actually just a small part of a larger problem. The issue here is how much of the COVID relief money has been misspent, to put it nicely. People who shouldn't be getting this money, getting it. There are people who've been caught who actually ran scams and made off with a ton of COVID relief money for their own purposes. In this case, all we're talking about initially is the city of West Haven, Connecticut. And the argument is 80% of the COVID relief money that went to West Haven was not used properly. That's a nice way of saying it was stolen. Meantime, what about the rest of Connecticut? Questions are only beginning to be asked, and I'm sorry, this may be Lamont's re-election year, but there's not going to be any running away from this. Sorry, Ned. Moving on. Now, another thing people don't realize is that Taiwan has been paying close attention to what's happening in Ukraine, as well as the Chinese. So this is an interesting angle, all right? You have this conflict ongoing, real time, and you have people from Taiwan taking the time and trouble to say, what can we learn from them to further discourage the Chinese from trying to invade us? You know, let's say we'll stay tuned on this, but it just conveys the message there's a lot going on in the background that we're not aware of. Okay, now, this is under the heading of good news, maybe. The next story is about bad news, definitely. So the good news, maybe, is that's certainly true for the Northeast, but the electrical grids, the power distribution system that we have is aging and falling apart. Now, to the credit, in this case, of the state of Connecticut, they have been spending a lot of time and effort looking at different ways of modernizing, upgrading, and adapting our power grid system. There's a term you should pay attention to. It's called microgrids. So the notion is that by creating a more decentralized power system, then the impact of outages will be reduced. So this article talks about that. I'm not quite sure what to think of it, but I'll quickly mention one company, Bloom Energy, with novel fuel cell technology. They have about a dozen demonstration projects going on in Connecticut, and Connecticut's looking at other companies and their technologies. So there's a very active program here, and it's there's actually almost a sense of urgency, which I find surprising when you read this article. I want to bring that to your attention. Meantime, the bad news definitely, yep, you think we don't have enough liberal judges in Connecticut? Get ready, we're going to get a whole hell of a lot more. Yes. So I don't know if this is one of Lamont's ways of saying goodbye, but there's, in round numbers, it's about 30-some judges. They're going to be nominated and going to be reviewed, for approval by the legislature. For people who are so annoyed with the bias of the judges in our system, this is only going to make it worse. So I just wanted to bring that up. Meantime, number 7, Joseph Paul Watson, I think that's the name of the guy. Paul Joseph Watson put up a piece on how globalists are really dedicated to making your children dumber, right? And as one small piece of this, in the Greenwich school system, we should all be up in arms about this. There's this thing called social emotional learning. They're now devoting an hour a week in what's supposed to be chemistry to this crap, okay? Talk about dumbing people down. And yes, the parents are pissed off, the students are pissed off. They don't want this crap. They want to learn chemistry. That's where in the class. So, anyway, next, let me just read the title. That's the best part. Fauci's colleague offered to secretly erase, that's the operative phrase, secretly erase, a COVID-19 paper containing data hidden by China. Wait a second. Data hidden by China? All right, so already you knew, you had information in front of you where it said this is information the Chinese had hid, and you were ready to publish it. What the hell happened? Whose side are you on? Who are you really working for? How's the money flowing here? We'd like to get a little answer, but it'll be up. Read it. All right. And just to underscore it, see, this article is from, what's the publication? Manhattan Contrarian. Okay. I love the title. China continues to laugh at the West's Green New Deal. You can be sure that they don't buy this BS about the Green New Deal, nor do many other countries. So it's a long article, okay, but I definitely would like you to have a good look at it. And I think the most dramatic moment for those of you who saw it was when, I'm trying to remember the name of that representative who held up the hard drive. What was his name?
Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz, yes. There he was grilling the hell out of the assistant director for cybersecurity in the FBI, saying, where's the hard drive? You must know where, you're the guy who runs cyber, you should know where it is. And of course, he kept saying, I don't know, it's not my job, not my responsibility, blah, 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 typical bureaucratic speak. And at the end, Matt holds it up and says, I want to enter this hard drive into the record I have right here of Matt from Hunter Biden. Oh, by the way, before I get into the rest of this, what an embarrassing moment for Bill Nadler. Is it Bill Nadler? Jerry. Sorry, Jerry. Jerry Nadler. Okay, so he was clearly blindsided by this. He didn't know what to think or what to say. It was your humana moment. So there the camera was on him. You couldn't see who it was, but the guy was whispering in his ear and gesticulating and telling him what to say in response to Representative Gaetz' proposal to have this information entered into the record. So you had Nadler fighting it, saying, no, we're not going to enter it into the record. It's just another moment, ladies and gentlemen, where you look at these people who supposedly represent us and you just have to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? But what I find interesting in that moment is that you have this guy who can barely think, let alone speak. He doesn't know what to say, and he's the guy in charge. He's the senior official. He's the head of the committee. Good God Almighty, okay? Kakistocracy, when we're ruled by incompetent idiots. Kakistocracy, and he's the leading one. Anyway, so the thing about this article here, Okay, while you had the assistant director, the director for cybersecurity in the FBI, he was acting confused. So here's a story where you had other elements of the intelligence agency approaching the FBI and saying, we want to be able to look at this hard drive to see if there's any compromising information. I'm sure on their behalf they had no trouble finding the hard drive, but when it came to Matt Gaetz, oh, suddenly they couldn't find it. What games these people play. And speaking of games, here we're going to end up now with Connecticut Commie of the Week. Have we got a theme song for that yet?
We will.
We will. We'll have a, yes, because they just keep coming. Well, this week's Connecticut Commie of the Week is Manuel Camacho. Now, Manuel Camacho is a little bit different because he's rather young. As of this writing, last October, he's 15 years old. But this guy is laying it down. My goodness, is he laying it down. Wow. So he's extremely active. He's in the New Haven Young Communist League. I had no idea they existed, but they do. They have a Facebook page, and the Facebook page has 865 followers, and at that moment, 105 were following. So I'm not quite sure what to make of this, but communists are very active in New Haven, so we'll leave it at that. And some people have pointed to him and say, yeah, Manuel Camacho will be the future president of the United States. He's very hardworking. But, you know, there's the old joke that I'm going to finish up with, Eric, where it said in your freshman year in college, you're a communist. In your sophomore year, you're a socialist. In your junior year, you're a Democrat. And when you graduate, you're a Republican. The point being that all the realities of life suddenly bang into you, and you realize that that whole communism thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So on that happy note, till next week, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I don't deserve